Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. Today is Monday, December 7th, so the college football bowl assignments are out. Some of the lines are already out offshore, and we are going to talk with professional sports bettor Teddy Covers to get some of his thoughts on what he looks for, factors that are important to him when it comes to handicapping these early bowl lines. Some of the lines move significantly from opening to kickoff with so much time in between with these bowl games. Teddy Covers, thanks for being with us. First, let me ask you just about line movement in terms of bowl games. In your mind, I mean, it's always important to jump on the early lines before they move, because usually, you're going to get value and they're going to move against you, so you're going to want to lock in that value. Is that particularly true with bowl games in your experience?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, look, when we talk about the entirety of the bowl schedule, what do we have? We have 40 bowl games and then the title game. So we have lines going up for 40 bowl games,
Right.
Which is, a little bit ridiculous. And of course, these matchups are not set in advance. The odds makers are working very, very hard over the course of the 16 hours or so between when the pairings were announced and the lines came up this morning. And what you're going to see over the course of basically the next 24 hours, you're going to see the markets mature a little bit. You talked about the openers. We have lines up in Vegas on every bowl game now. You have lines up offshore on every bowl game now. And not every sports book posts the same opening number. So
Right.
what we see initially from the very first line moves, you see two things come into play. First is that you see the markets moving towards which of the opening lines they think is correct. And the second type of move that we see are some of the very, very early opinions among some bettors. But don't think for a minute that the biggest bettors are looking to kill their market on a game that they feel very strongly about with an initial wager here.
Right.
It's not uncommon to see a head fake when it comes to these very early bowl line movements, where the savvy bettors are actually betting it in the wrong direction,
Right.
hoping to spur action on the wrong side so they can come back later with a much bigger bet on the side that they want at a more attractive number.
All right. So, what are some of the factors that you look for when you're looking for line value with these bowl lines, both the openers and as the market matures?
Well, when we start to look at the openers, I mean, the number one thing that I concentrate on is strength of schedule, because that is something that, number one, is very easy to come up with. All you do is go look at the Sagarin ratings, and while I have all kinds of disagreement with how Sagarin performs his methodology for those ratings, the bottom line is that they do have a major impact on the marketplace. And the teams with the tougher strength of schedule are likely to take bets in matchups against teams with a weaker strength of schedule. Look at BYU and Utah as perhaps one early example, where Utah is taking the early money, bet up from 3, now 3 minus juice in most locations. Utah's strength of schedule, well, Sagarin says it's 40 points higher, 28 versus 68. And then you look at the schedules themselves and you say, where's the 40 points worth of difference here? Oh, it's this one game that BYU played against an FCS foe that's dragging their overall strength of schedule down about 20 places. You'll find those type of things, that, one game against a bottom tier foe or one step up game against a top tier foe adjusts a team's strength of schedule far more than it should based on those ratings. And that's an area where bettors can legitimately find value betting against some of these strength of schedule differentials.
All right, Teddy, and let me ask you this. This is something that, I'm sure most casual bettors, recreational bettors wonder about. If you see a team that usually these teams close with some kind of momentum, either negative momentum or positive momentum. Sometimes it's a span of the last 2 or 3 games where something significant happened to them, or maybe it's just the very last game of the season where something significant happened. What's your take on end of the year regular season momentum and the impact of that on bowl value?
Absolutely meaningless. Particularly teams that come into bowl season hot. Someone was 2-6 and they won their last 4 games to get to 6-6, and oh, they're hot. Well, they might be hot if they play this Saturday. They're not going to be hot if they play a month from now, or
Right.
3 weeks from now. And the reality, even when you find teams that are supposedly disappointed in their bowl matchups,
Right.
When you're disappointed on the night that the matchups are announced, doesn't mean that when you have the 15 practices between now and the bowl game, that disappointment lingers. And it certainly doesn't mean that once the game kicks off and you're actually playing, that those teams are going to come out flat. And, you'll oftentimes find your very best opportunities in the bowls after the games have already kicked off. Those live wagering opportunities, real good for bettors who understand the concept of in-game momentum swings.
Yes, I mean, like the first team that comes to my mind this year might be like Washington State, right? They were sort of like an historically great bet in the Pac-12 all year long. And then their very last game, of course, at Washington, they got completely blown out and they lost against the spread by a mile. So now heading into their bowl game, what's my thought on them? Do I think that they're going to be roughly as undervalued as they were for almost all the season? Or is that, last game that they played somehow indicative of what's more likely to happen in the bowl game?
Well, the last game that they played come against a Washington team that's been bet on all the way down the stretch. And note the fact that the Huskies are big chalk against Memphis. 8.5 against Memphis was a line that surprised me, but it shows the respect that the betting markets have for Washington. And number two, even more important than that, is that Washington State didn't have Luke Falk for their finale.
Right.
And they are expected to have their quarterback back for the bowl game. I would imagine that would make a huge difference. And I don't think that any quote unquote, loss of momentum for Washington State from that season finale defeat at the hands of the Huskies carries forward even a little bit. And remember, this isn't a team that hasn't been bowling on a consistent basis in recent years. And teams that haven't had that opportunity tend to be excited about it when they get the chance.
Awesome thoughts, Teddy Covers. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more bowl talk with you in upcoming weeks. Thanks so much.